Okay, welcome to council and staff. This is our emergency council meeting of Monday, September 20th, 2021. The time is 4 p.m. At this time, I'll call the meeting to order. And just for the records that Councillor Walsh has sent in his regrets for today. He's unable to make the meeting. And something different that we're going to be doing today is a land acknowledgement. And I'll read this, so bear with me.
Mayor,
Yes.
our bylaw that we adopted at our last council meeting came into force and effect on September 28th.
Oh, okay, then we will forego the land acknowledgement until the next
It'll
meeting.
be in your agenda at our next meeting for you.
Okay, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
All right, then I'll welcome everyone. Of course, those that may be watching via our YouTube channel. I've already said welcome to those that are in the panel right now. And we'll carry on with our meeting. So I'm asking then for a moment of silent reflection so that we may reflect upon our duties of today. Okay, thank you. I'll ask council at this time if there's any declaration of any pecuniary interest at this time or at time of the subject. Seeing no hands, thank you. I'm looking for a motion then for the approval of the agenda for today's meeting, September 20th, 2021. Councillor Ward, seconded by Councillor Archer. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. So now we're on to staff and committee reports, and R1 would be Candace White, our CAO Clerk Treasurer. And this report is regarding amendment to the Community Center Safety Reopening Plan. And I also see on the panel that Seamus McDougall has joined our meeting too. So Candace, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm sure as council is already aware, the province adopted Ontario Regulation 645/21, which is a regulation that provided amendments to Ontario Regulation 364/20, which is the regulation that has been governing us since we entered into step 3 of the reopening plan of the province. Section 2.1 of OREG 645/21 states that there's 2 areas of township facilities that will require proof of vaccination. Those being the indoor areas of meeting and event spaces, and those being indoor areas of facility used for sports and recreational fitness activities, including water parks and personal physical fitness trainers, et cetera. This also, for greater certainty, does include facilities where spectators watch events. There is 2 sections that are exempt from those sections, but they do not identify any township-run facilities. They are overnight day camps and child care centers and things like that. So nothing that the township is responsible for activities. So we have no exemption in regards to facilities. Before you today, due to OREG 645/21, you will see amendments once again to the community center safety plan. This will identify the areas in which 645/21 come into play procedurally at the community center. Staff has highlighted in the document itself any changes in yellow that council can see. So I'll just pull that up and go through that. You'll see underneath general requirements there, this isn't 645/21 related, but you'll see that we added utilizing the most recent provincially approved form. There has been some struggles as far as they change quite often, the screening forms, and having to ensure that they're updated all the time. So just in there as a friendly reminder to the user groups. All proof of vaccination protocols have been followed as per regulation and policy. So just a blank generalized statement under general requirements. And also that all organizations shall adhere to all regulations as put forward by their governing bodies, i.e. OMHA, OWHA, and Skate Canada. Those would be the 3 largest governing bodies that oversee most of our seasonal contractual users. As we know already, the OMHA does have a separate regulation that's coming into force in effect on October 31st. So this blanket statement will cover throughout the season if a governing body such as Skate Canada then brings something else in, OWHA brings something else in. Those are not regulations that township staff will be adopting and putting into our safety plan. They're separate regulations that those governing bodies are putting on those particular groups. So it'll be up to them to mandate that. So that sentence, it could be different for every governing body and every different group, and they could change. It's hard enough to track the province and Peterborough Public Health. So this statement means that they're stating and acknowledging and attesting to the fact that they will follow all of their governing bodies, rules and regulations, whatever they may be. Township staff will stay abreast as to what they are. But as far as adopting them into a municipal document, we're not planning on doing that at this time. Underneath rentals, you will see a couple of highlighted bullets. Prior to entry, all users shall assign a responsible representative to conduct identification and proof of vaccination checks on the following individuals: all coaches, volunteers, and officials 18 years of age and older, all participants 18 years of age and older, and all spectators 12 years of age and older. So those three groups that are mentioned there are all either governed under provincial regulation or the letter of instruction issued last Friday by Peterborough Public Health, which then included coaches, volunteers, and officials, which had been exempt from the provincial regulation. But Peterborough Public Health recognized that that was a gap and they wanted to close that gap. So they issued a letter of instruction. So all organizations have to adhere to that. The user representative who conducted the pre-entry screening and vaccine proof check shall sign the attestation provided at the table just inside the entrance. So what each user group at the side entrance, what they'll see, the officials, coaches, volunteers, and the players enter first, as council was made aware at our last council meeting. The first person of that group that enters into the community center, on the hand sanitization table, there's going to be an attestation, which was included in council's package today. They'll have to sign basically stating that they have conducted all the appropriate screenings, contact tracing, and now of course the ID and proof of vaccination checks, so that they're attesting that that has been completed prior to then allowing the full group to enter into the facility. And then of course they will also be responsible for the spectators as well. Spectators shall be fully vaccinated as per provincial definition. So provincial definition has been added to this in order to ensure that as it changes, as the definition of fully vaccinated changes, we're in compliant. We don't have to update the document every time the province makes a change. At the bottom of the document, you will see that we also added an acknowledgement. Basically, all of the contracts for the community center, for the most part, have been entered into. So this is an acknowledgement that once they receive the safety plan, that they can acknowledge on behalf of that user group that they have received the amendments to this plan and they will adhere by it. You will also see, we used to have the Millennium Room and Town Hall on this document, and it's getting to the point where it's time for them to have their own document. So we've just kind of erased those two bullets. So you'll see parts of the safety plan have either been highlighted or it's been struck out based on the amendments to the document, and this will be provided to the user groups immediately after today's meeting, because obviously it comes into force and effect as of Wednesday, September 22nd. The other key part to this is provincial regulation says the person or owner responsible for the facility, which of course is the township. There was a fair bit of chatter about this at both the CAO meeting that happened last Thursday and the meeting with the municipal recreation managers and CAOs on Friday with Peterborough Public Health. It was unanimous amongst the city of Peterborough and all lower tiers that that responsibility would be passed on through a document such as being presented to council today to the user group. They know their users, they're already in contact with them for screening and contact tracing, so they can conduct the ID checks and their vaccination proof at the same time that those other two procedures are being conducted. Prior to moving on to the workplace vaccination plan, Mayor, I'll take any questions.
Okay, any questions from council? It's pretty in-depth. There's a lot of reading that was involved in this one, but pretty straightforward. Okay, Deputy Mayor Burt, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Just one question for clarification, and you stated it, but I just want to make sure I had written it down right. So the vaccine proof is done by the organization, whether it be the skating club or the hockey team, for those coming in. And you stated that that is also for the spectators. So spectators are coming in. It's also the organization that is checking that, not staff of the arena, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank
The
you.
only time that staff at the arena is going to be doing it is for one-off rentals.
Okay.
So if
Okay.
someone randomly picks, anyone that's a consistent, either it's contractual, seasonal, or just a consistent rental once a week, once a month, as soon as they are in that consistency, then the responsibility would be the user. If someone, a family just rented the ice for a family skate, say for an hour, we would conduct the checks to ensure that they're done properly. But anything that's seasonal or contractual or on a regular basis, it's up to the organization and the user group. So the other thing with that is we'll be able to have we've recommended that a consistent person be conducting those checks. It isn't easy. I don't know if you were able to read the guidance document that was attached, that has been put out by the province. Really grateful to receive the guidance document. The province's Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Moore, released this, and it's the first one we've ever received that kind of provides some detail guidance and questions and answers for the OREG instead of just relieving the OREG and leaving it up to interpretation in a simple question and answer document. So it's definitely more than we've ever received before, but you can see on there that even identification, an expired provincial piece of identification cannot be used, but an expired passport can be used. And the date obviously is going to change because you have to be 14 days past your second Health Canada approved dose. So that 14 days is a moving target. The 2009 year, whatever date that is in 2009, as kind of that dead date for the 12 and up. So there's dates that are going to have to be put into, obviously, the person who's doing the checks at the door all of the time. So it's not easy. It's an undertaking that's going to be put forward across the board. But it is a new world that we're living in, and there's really no way around it, whether you're going to grab a bite to eat at a restaurant or going to watch your child play hockey. I guess it is just the new way of the world. So if there's no more questions in regards to the reopening plan, I'll jump into the workplace vaccination policy.
Councillor Ward, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I just had one question. You did state some of your concerns. Are there any others that, any other problems challenges that you may foresee coming forward that you may want us to be aware of?
And at the community center?
Yes, at the community center, to be specific.
I think because it's a change,
Yeah.
and because it is a proof of vaccination and an identification check, I do foresee that there is potentially going to be some issues at the door. We are speaking to staff in regards to an enforcement and how that's going to be dealt with. Hopefully everyone remains respectful of everyone. They're just basically enforcing provincial regulation. We just can't be hard on the messenger that's delivering that message. There's nobody around this table that made that decision. So we just need to, but it is our job to enforce it as owners responsible for a facility. It is also, the onus is on the organizers and the users of the facility. They're bringing large mass groups of people together where the majority of them are unvaccinated. And with that comes a huge responsibility. And this is part of it. But I do suspect there'll be a tough conversation or two. But we are going to have the same approach. Nobody's going to be treated different than anybody else. Everyone is the same. It'll be a consistent, clear approach across the board. And we will let council know if we get into anything that we need to change any policy based on behavior at the community center. But it's what we pay $700,000 a year for placing for. I guess we got 911 right there. So yeah. If needed, okay. But hopefully not.
Great. Seamus, I seen your hand come up there one time. You had something further you might want to add?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. So I just wanted to let you know, the OMHA made their announcement today. They're sticking with their October 31st deadline. So right now, until then, players 12 to 18 are exempt, but come October 31st, in order to play in the OMHA, they have to show proof as well. And to touch on Candace's last point, I would hope most parents get the message after day one, but I'm sure there'll be some parents that day 2, 3 are still trying to come in. And that's why, again, keeping it consistent on who's doing it, as well as our staff being there and making sure that if they don't comply, they can't come in, because it's a law.
Yeah, thanks for that. I've talked to a few hockey parents, and they already know, and some of them aren't vaccinated, and they say, well, we just can't go watch right now. And then I said, but what happens if your child's not vaccinated? Then they're just not going to be playing. Simple as that. So, I mean, there's parents out there already making the choice. They're not happy about it. Nobody's happy to be told what to do, but it is for the betterment of the community and as the people as a whole. So, Candace, where did you want to go from here now? You mentioned something there earlier.
Yes, thank you. And just to clarify, the township staff won't be enforcing the OMHA rule, like that'll be up to Norwood Minor Sports to be dealing with those still, checking those coming in. And this also means when games start, checking, like they'll be responsible for checking the visiting team as well, to make sure that everything's done that way. I'm not really sure what happened to Councillor War. Maybe she was struggling with internet and we have lost her. Hopefully she's able to rejoin. But she is gone.
Yeah, so
right off the meeting.
Yeah, I meant to mention that earlier when her screen was blank, that she was having some internet troubles there from her home, and that she was probably going to fade away on us sooner than later, and it has happened. So around 4:15 she dropped off, I believe.
Okay. Thank you. Well, we do have quorum, so Mayor, are we okay to carry on?
Yes, please do. Yes.
Okay, so the second half of the staff report does speak to the formal letter of recommendation that was released by Dr. Salvatierra on September 9th, 2021, which is a recommendation for all workplaces to adopt a workplace vaccination policy or amend a current policy if the workplace does have one in place. This policy would require all workers to be fully vaccinated prior to a specified date unless otherwise exempt, for a couple of very narrow scoped exemptions under medical reasons or potentially under the Human Rights Code for CREED. This was discussed by Peterborough County CAOs in a meeting on Thursday, September 16th. And we are, it seems to be consensus across the county that a policy will be brought forward for all lower tier municipalities across the county. I've been in contact with the HR solicitor. I have received a copy of the workplace vaccination policy that is going to be presented to County Council. I have received a copy of Peterborough Public Health Unit's workplace vaccination policy that they give out to their workers. And we seem to be all taking a very, very similar approach. So the recommendation today is that Council directs staff to prepare that policy, and that so we can consider it at our September 28th meeting of council. So I'll take any questions.
Yeah. Any questions of council at this time? Just one from me, I guess. I believe my question would be that, well, there's Councillor War coming back on at 4:18. Welcome back. Maybe blank your screen out and we'll just make sure that you're acknowledged that you're here. And if you need to say something, Paula, just speak up, okay? Thanks. My question was, if this does pass today in a motion and it does come back September 28th, 2021, there's a time limit basically for vaccination then to be completely vaccinated. Is there an end date on that, or how do we work that, or how staff figure that in?
Yes, there would be a date in which the worker would be required to be considered fully vaccinated.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of council on this about the workplace vaccination policy? Deputy Mayor, please.
Yeah, through you, Mayor, it's not so much a question. I think, once we see that policy, we'll likely have several questions about that. And And I think just it's important to realize, certainly none of us wanted to see that this was coming down, and it's, you know, going to be a decision that has to be made. And we certainly have made tough decisions throughout the last year and a half, and this is going to be one of the tough ones. And but I think moving forward, we have to do our best to keep the community safe. So I'll be looking forward to seeing that policy. And certainly both Mayor Bonneau and myself, we do have this coming up at County Council on Wednesday as well. So I'm sure the policies will be similar.
Yeah.
I can state that we own public facilities. So it's like the letter went out to all workplaces. But there, in my opinion, there is a difference between a private business and a public business, where we're a public entity. We are a level of government, and we do invite vast numbers of the public into our facilities at one time for multiple different reasons and in different magnitudes. So it does heighten our level of responsibility as far as what it is we need to ensure and enforce. Not to mention, we enforce a provincial policy. So we could be refusing entry to a member of the public because they're unvaccinated based on the provincial policy. And without this worker policy, it would be by an unvaccinated worker. So we could have an unvaccinated worker enforcing a vaccination policy put in place by the province. So there is lots of different caveats to this in regards to how it is we have to take a look at it. It's not easy. It's uncomfortable across the board. I can tell, I do not know the number of workers that we currently have that are unvaccinated, as I'm unable to ask the question based on our HR solicitor advice until we have the policy in place. I am aware that we do have the situation does exist in the township. I do know that we do have some, but I'm unsure of the willingness once the policy is put in place. Once the policy is enacted and we are able to ask the question, and in order to gather that data, I'll be able to have a better idea as to where the township will sit from an employment perspective based on the decision.
Right.
So it's not comfortable because I would like to have that reversed. I would like to know going in, but I can't know until the policy is in play. So
Deputy Mayor, you had your
yeah, I was just going to say it'd be nice if that was reversed. But so when this comes into place on the 22nd, that question still can't be asked. The policy has to be in place by the township, which would be the 28th. Not okay. I thought maybe it could be asked at the 22nd, but okay, thank you.
Well, the 22nd is there's only two things that come into play in the 22nd.
Yeah.
It's the letter of instruction and as well as the provincial regulation. But the letter of recommendation that went out by Dr. Salvatierra didn't put a date like the 22nd of September on it.
Okay, thank you.
I think you're going to start to see them roll out based on the CAO meeting between this week and the second week of October. So over that 3-week span, you're going to see all of them adopted in different versions, but it seems like the majority are going to be along the same line.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Councillor War. You can blank your screen out again if you want to talk, and you're muted. There you go.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just wanted, through you, Mayor, I just wanted to say, perhaps as there's more restrictions on the things that people can and cannot do in the province, perhaps that will be something that members of the municipality will encourage them to be vaccinated if they're not.
Yeah, good comment. Just another thing I was thinking was when you were talking there, Candace, about this workplace vaccination, and we're going to be talking about it at county here too, and it's probably going to be passed at county within the next few weeks too, I would assume. Do you foresee any township in Peterborough County that might try to opt out of that, or are they able to through the public health?
I don't see any municipality opting out completely, no.
Right.
I see potentially like different implementation dates based on, staffing complement what they have going on. I see some including some groups of people and others than others. It all depends on the makeup of your committees, your boards, your fire departments. Like you may see some variances there, but you're not going to see, based on the 2 meetings that I've had in the last 4 days, everyone across the board is going to be adopting a policy in regards to workplace vaccination. There'd be nobody opting out that I'm aware of.
Yeah, it'd be a shock if they did, I suppose.
Mhm.
For sure.
Okay, any other questions from council on this at all? Seeing no hands. So at this time, you're looking for the recommendation to be read out for the motion?
I can read it out, sure.
Sure, please do.
That the Council of the Township of Asphodel-Norwood accepts this report regarding an amendment to the Community Center Safety Plan for information, and further that the Council of the Township of Asphodel-Norwood approves the amendments to the Community Center Safety Plan as presented, and further that the Council of the Township of Asphodel-Norwood directs staff to prepare a workplace vaccination policy for their consideration at the September 28th, 2021 meeting of council.
Thank you. Motion by Councillor Archer, seconded by Deputy Mayor Burt. Is there any comments or anything concerning this motion? Seeing none, all in favor then, please. And that's carried. Thank you. Now on to R2 then, Candace, regarding meeting and event spaces safety plan, please.
And before I get through to presenting the report, on the safety plan itself, under general requirements, bullet number 7, the second line, it says this includes coaches, athletes, and spectators from both the home and visiting team. That is going to be struck out in the version that's adopted and released out to all of the user groups, because obviously that is from the community center safety plan and shouldn't have got transferred over to the meeting and event spaces safety plan. Again, under Ontario Regulation 645-21, that was adopted to amend Ontario Regulation 364-20. The second part of that does impact Asphodel-Norwood operations is the indoor areas of meetings and event spaces. Again, the subsection 4 that is exempt from this section does list activities that does not include anything that the township is responsible for. The regulation details that each patron age 12 and over shall provide the identification and proof of vaccine unless they are engaging in sports and recreational facilities, in fitness, in an organized sport. Then identification and proof is required for 18+. If the activity is unorganized, then their age requirement of 12+ applies. The provincial regulation provided an exemption for coaches, officials, and volunteers, but of course there was the letter of instruction that we just previously discussed in R1 that does include these individuals. So as a whole, for the majority of rentals, we're looking at all participants in an organized recreational fitness activity, coaches, officials, and volunteers age 18+, and all patrons and participants in an unorganized activity age 12+. And the reason that recreational fitness activities in the meeting and event spaces is there is rentals sometimes we have Tai Chi, we have the Feng Loi group, and we do have yoga sometimes. So that we don't have that operating as we speak sitting here today, but I suspect between now and Christmas, where all of these regulations could still be at play, we will see it. So we thought we would just include that in the language now. So when we do open up for that, we do have what the province wants us to have in place. The regulation states that the person responsible for a business or an organization is responsible for compliance. Again, that is the township. That being said, this responsibility can be passed on to the users of the facility through a safety plan or rental agreement, which is what township staff is recommending to council today. And this approach seems to be consistent across Peterborough County. This is where we are asking council to deviate from provincial regulation. The regulation states that a patron who is entering a meeting event space for the sole purpose of a wedding service or funeral service that is not associated with a social gathering is exempt. So basically what that means is if you were to rent, say, the Millennium Room for your wedding, you can come to the service part, the ceremony part of the wedding, and be unvaccinated. Then as soon as that ceremony was over, all of the unvaccinated people would have to be asked to leave the facility prior to the dinner or prior to any social gathering. That is how it's worded. Township staff are just asking that if we are going to be renting our facilities for weddings or celebration of life, regardless of the capacity of the event, everyone is double vaccinated when they come in. And then that way we're not going to people halfway through the event, asking them to leave the facility for the remainder of the event. That's an extremely uncomfortable position to put staff in, to have to go to patrons who are attending that specific event in the Millennium Room and ask them to leave based on their vaccination status when they've already been in the building probably for an hour amongst all of the same people. So that being said, there could potentially be a rental for a wedding ceremony only. We tend to only get the social part. That's the problem. People don't tend to rent the Millennium Room for the ceremony and then go somewhere else for the social. They tend to get married somewhere else and come to us for the social event. So, but potentially someone could rent the Millennium Room or the town hall for a ceremony only with no social gathering in place. And if that's the case, according to the provincial regulation, they should be able to attend that event unvaccinated. Now, there is a caveat in the regulation that does state for a certain period of time, they can provide a test, because obviously there's been some events across the province obviously booked prior to September 22nd implementation date. So you are allowed to provide a negative test in order to get in. I think it's a 3-week window, and then anything beyond that, the regulation comes in full force and effect, because you should be, it's up until October 13th. You're allowed to provide an antigen test administered within the previous 48 hours, establishing that the person is negative for COVID-19 to the person responsible for the establishment. And then after October 13th, it comes into full force and effect. We don't have any rentals right now between now and October 13th where this would come into play. I do believe that it's going to come into play that you're going to have to be double vaccinated to go anywhere. So since we're not upsetting any apple cart right now, township staff is of the opinion we go in to rent the facility. If you're coming for a meeting, you have to prove double vaccination. If you're coming to rent it for yoga or anything under provincial regulation, you need to be double vaccinated. It's the township staff position that regardless of the provincial regulation, that is the minimum. As a owner of a facility, we are able to apply our own rules. And if we would like, we can't make it less restrictive than the provincial regulation, but we can make it more restrictive. So from our perspective, if you're going to rent it for a social gathering of any sort, you should be double vaccinated and provide identification and proof of vaccination at the door prior to entering our facilities for that activity. Okay. Otherwise, our luck, it would be father of the bride that would be unvaccinated. So, and we would be asking them to leave after the ceremony. I just don't know how we do that. I don't think it's comfortable. That being said, we don't have any, we may not get any booked. It's not like we have weddings booked every week. So we do get the odd celebration of life. So that would be I think we would run into that ahead of a wedding.
Just my thoughts. I don't think, I think just cut and paste basically is the easiest way to do it without trying to confuse the situation. You can and you can't, or he said, she said. If it's there and it's one rule, it's not a bad rule, then nobody gets confused. Simple as that. Is there, yeah, Deputy Mayor Burt, you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, just a comment through you, Mayor. Yeah, I agree. I couldn't imagine Seamus and his staff having to do what Candace just described about, if there was a ceremony and then having to ask people to leave. That is just a nightmare waiting to happen. So So I agree. And if other user groups are having to, prove the double vaccination, we can't have a double standard. So I certainly agree. And I'm sure, it's not a good position to put anybody in. So yeah, I do agree.
Councillor Laura, you had your hand up.
Yes, through you, Mayor. Yes, consistency in the policy for all involved would be ideal. The second part to a question I have is if there's contact tracing, I understand that the user group or whoever would be keeping a contact list, do they have to supply to the township? If there ever be a problem that you would have to do contact with the health, or would it be between the user group itself? Would the township be involved?
We try to keep as limited records as possible due to Personal Protection and Freedom Act, PFIPA, basically. We don't like to keep medical records of any sort. That being said, that's what the attestation is for, so that they are signing, stating that they have completed the contact tracing, screening, and proof of vaccination. So we are going to replace that form at the beginning of every day in all of the facilities. So then, and then those forms will be filed by date. So then if there is a case that has been identified by Peterborough Public Health, they'll contact us and they'll state that there was a case affiliated to an event held at one of our facilities. We will pull that attestation sheet for that day, forward it to them. Here's the contact name and phone number of the person responsible for that event that attested that all of the proper protocols were followed, and that would be given to Peterborough Public Health.
Thank you. I don't know if you answered that before, but my internet went down, so I just wanted to have the clarification.
Oh, no,
Thanks.
and I wasn't asked that. That's okay.
Okay. Yeah.
All good. Any other questions from council at this time?
No.
Okay, seeing none. Do we have a recommendation for this one, Candace?
Yes, we do. There's one other quick thing, Mayor, before we call the motion. I just want to talk about the libraries. I was speaking to the CO librarian this afternoon in regards to the library. As of right now, patrons entering into the library doesn't seem to be included in the regulation, that they're not having to provide proof of vaccination to go in and patron the library. That being said, when there's meetings held or events, such as I know this week they're having the wreath making event. So when they're having events, that's an event. So programming, events, anything like that will require proof of double vaccination in order to attend those events. So just wanted to kind of clarify that that's going to be, I believe, the approach at the library as of right now.
Yeah. Deputy Mayor Burt, please go ahead.
Yeah, I can just make a comment on that. She called me. I'm on the policy committee. So yeah, there is a policy. I know she's reached out to Peterborough Public Health and yourself, Candace. So a policy is being drafted. And I know we do have a meeting there Wednesday evening as well. And that will hopefully be in place for the board and then moving forward. So yeah, that's what's going to be happening. But as far as patrons coming in and choosing their books, it will just be the same safety protocols that are in place right now.
Yeah, so as they're a municipal facility, they have to follow our meeting and event spaces protocols and guidelines for renting the facility. So she's going to take the protocols that we're adopting here and then take them forward to the board on your Wednesday night meeting. But as far as workplace, we are talking about that workplace and workers, and that'll come forward to the township on Tuesday, and that'll have to go forward in a policy then to the library board specifically. But anything to do with renting of that space, they have to follow our policy, which means anybody renting the space 12 and up. It's no different than someone coming in to pay their taxes isn't going to have to provide proof of double vaccination to come in and buy bag tags or patron the municipal office. So the way I look at it is library, like people going in, it's the same there, unless Ontario Library Service comes out with something different in the meantime. But as my understanding, they've been quiet up till now. So
yeah, I agree. Okay. Anything else then, council? at this time? None? Okay. Candace, you have a recommendation for us, please?
That the council of the Township of Asphodel-Norwood accepts this report regarding the meeting and event spaces safety plan for information, and further that the council of the Township of Asphodel-Norwood approves the meeting and event spaces safety plan as presented.
Okay, looking for a motion. Motion by Councillor War, seconded by Councillor Archer. Does anyone speak to the motion? Seeing none, then all in favor? And then that's carried then. Thank you. Okay, that basically ends our meeting. I'm looking for the clerk for the confirming bylaw then, please.
Okay. Just a minute.
It's all bylaws.
Keeping you hopping today. Want me to read it?
I know I have an agenda somewhere.
I can read it.
I know it's like that the bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the emergency council meeting held on September 20th, 2021 be read a first, second, and third time and numbered bylaw 51.
2021-51.
2021-51.
Excellent. Motion by Councillor Archer, seconded by Deputy Mayor Burt. All in favor? That's carried. Would you like to read out the adjournment then, Candace, please? No, I'm kidding. The recommendation that the emergency meeting held September 20th, 2021 be adjourned at 4:41 p.m. with council to meet for a regular meeting on September the 28th, 2021, or at the call of the chair. Motioned by Councillor War, seconded by Deputy Mayor Burt. All in favor? And that's carried. Well, thank you, staff. That was a lot of reading. That was a lot of time spent getting the things straightened out from public health and what the province is sending down. I appreciate all your hard work that's gone into this for us. And council, be safe. Staff, be safe. And